Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I am your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have two wonderful guests on. We have Amy Beard and Bridget Ramey, and they are co-chairs for the 18th annual Dancing with the Stars, presented by Mercedes-Benz of Austin, which benefits the Center for Child Protection. And when I say it is a fun event with lots of people who really want to make a positive difference in the community, this is really one of the events to do that. And it's such a wonderful organization, and it's such a dynamic event that I cannot wait to dive into it with, these two wonderful women who have, given back so much to this organization and to the Austin community. So with that, Amy, Bridget, welcome. And we're so excited to have you both on as guests today.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I am thrilled to have you. So I want to kind of get right into it. And Amy, I'd love for you to field this first question. Can you talk a little bit about what the mission of the Center for Child Protection is?
Sure. So the mission of the center is to end the cycle of child abuse through advocacy, education, and community support. And a huge piece of that community support is this Dancing with the Stars Austin fundraiser. It's our largest fundraiser, and it's the community giving back to an organization that supports children during the investigation and prosecution of crimes against children.
Thank you for sharing that. And it really is such an important work that they do. And in many instances, some of the services that the center offers, it's really the only one-stop shop in the county that does all of those specific things.
That's right. The services include forensic interviews, educational prevention trainings, therapy for the children and their families or their protective caregivers, and medical care.
And that's really, and when people think about that with all the services that they offer, there are so many needs that, children who are going through trauma and abuse need, and to be able to get that all in one resource, is really incredible. And, it's such a highly respected organization. I always love asking this question, is how each of you initially got involved with the organization, because everyone finds, nonprofits in kind of their own unique way. So I would love for Bridget to go first and tell me how you were involved, and then Amy, I'd love for you to chime in afterward.
Okay.
So I've been involved in multiple children's organizations for the last 25 years, starting with the Austin Children's Shelter back when it was a home in Terrytown, and I got to see the importance of not only my support, but finding community programs and individuals to donate not only their time, their energy, their resources. And I really learned about the center when I was asked to dance. I danced 2 years ago, and went for the first time for my visit. And I think when you step foot into the center, you're just moved and you understand everything that Amy just said that the center does. There's just no way to know that without the proper education. I was blown away. I was touched. It also blew me away that all of the services are free. And as far as I know, we're the only nonprofit in Austin that does a lot of these different therapies for children and the different programs. We're the only one. And it's hard. You can't be hands-on with things like this, but in the background, children need to be supported. They don't have the ability to support themselves. And it's a community like no other. When we go to the events, when we go to the Angel Society event, it's amazing to see all of the different parts of Austin that come together to support this amazing cause.
That's fantastic. And I remember cheering you on your first time there. And I think you and I even it was either right before or right after the event, you had said that was your first time there. And I can't believe, because I've been going to that for many years, that I couldn't believe that was the first time that you had been to it, because I've seen you at so many different things, over the years.
Well, it wasn't my first time at the actual event, but it was only my second or third.
Okay.
And I was just blown away. I also think the event itself has a way of talking about the cause in a different way. Some of all of the other galas seem to be a little bit streamlined, more different, and ours is so interactive that people are more on cue to listen. They're waiting for the dancers to come on. I feel like the message gets delivered in a way because people are on the edge of their seats to support their dancer.
Thank you for clarifying that. And, that's all absolutely 100% true. And Amy, I'd love to hear your path as to how you initially got involved with this great organization.
So my path is it's quite a long journey, so I'm going to try to make this as very brief as possible. But I was unfortunately sexually abused as a child. And I ended up sharing that piece of my life with an employer of mine when I worked at the YMCA when I was in high school. And then fast forward that she was my boss at the YMCA. She ended up working with my mom 10 years later at Wells Fargo, and they bought a table to Ladies Play Bingo, another event for the Center for Child Protection that happens in October. And I went as a guest, and I was clearly moved by the organization, you know, cried at the event, was all bought in, and she leaned over to me and just said, "You need to be involved with this event." And I said, "Yes, yes, I do." And so she actually nominated me to the board. And after bingo, I went and toured the center, and it broke me wide open. And that was 2011, and I've been on the board ever since.
Wow. So you've been on the board for over a decade.
Well, they made me go away for like a year because our bylaws require you to roll off. But for the most part, I've been involved since 2011. I took a year off, but I was still chairing a couple committees, so I wasn't really gone.
So you were on, let's say, a quasi sabbatical. It sounds like
exactly.
is what you were on. So, you both talk so passionately about this. And the thing is that I will say, of all the cities that I work with on a regular basis, no one does children's fundraising events like Austin does. There are so many wonderful organizations. So I'd love for each of you, and we'll start with Bridget, what makes you devote so much time to this organization? Because I know both of you are very active in the community. What is it about the Center for Child Protection in particular that makes you so passionate about it?
You know, Rob, I'm constantly learning more and more about what the center does. And it never occurred to me the different steps, the so many steps that it takes to get a child through the process of interviewing to the point of getting to the point of prosecution. And we start our committee meetings with these moments for the mission, and we hear stories and we see what happens when a child interacts with Mickler and how that dog gets a child through this tough time. And I'm overwhelmed with these children who just, they're out there and they have no one to depend on. And here we have this organization that was formed that honors that and respects that and handholds and cheerleads and gets the child across the finish line. I just don't know where they would be. Year after year, we hear success stories of children who have gone through the program and gone through the system and now are thriving and surviving. And we know that there are so many children that don't do that. And Austin, you're right. Austin is such a supporter of children, and I'm so proud about that. But the center understands that it has to start with that very first interview. It has to be when the child is the most vulnerable and the most raw, and obviously the most scared and the most fearful. And we just have this blanket of support that the center provides, and I'm so respectful of it. I'm so in awe of it, and it's just such a privilege and an honor to be a part of it.
Very well said. And Amy, I want to know what makes you, where your passion comes from, that you've had that passion for over a decade. Because I will tell you, there's not that many people that stay on boards and stay that engaged with a particular organization for that long. So I'd love to hear more about that.
That is true. And again, that passion, it comes from within for me. It's, being on the board has been incredibly therapeutic for me. And no justice was ever served on my behalf. I didn't get to go through, the doors of the center. I didn't have that type of support. My abuse went unreported, which is unfortunately the case for most. But what I can do is stay involved and do everything I can on my end to make sure kids who go through those doors receive the support they need and the help they need to navigate their post-trauma. The years that the center will continue to see these children and their families for as long as they need it, free of charge. And so basically, at the end of the day, I'm just giving the help that I needed. And that's easy because inside that little girl's still there. And, I'm helping her out too.
Well, I think it's remarkable that you have found a way to take passion and pay it forward for others. I just think that's an incredible gift. And I'm sure because of that, you have helped countless number of people. And the interesting thing when I talk with people, for this show, a lot of them don't necessarily meet everyone who gets the services of an organization. I just think it's so incredible and so inspiring that you do that and that you've done that for a really good chunk of your life. So, I really appreciate that. And I want to turn, with that a little bit more to the event and Dancing with the Stars. So the one thing I have found about this event, and we're going to kind of tick off a couple of boxes here. This is held during the holidays. So there's and it's held on a Saturday night. So that means there's lots and lots and lots of competition out there. Unintended. So what is the one thing a person can do, and with this one, we'll start with Amy, to create a devoted following? What makes people want to show up for this event year after year after year?
I think your baseline starts with your supporters and your board. You need to make sure that the people connected to the mission that are out there speaking about it are connected to the mission. Hearts and minds connected to mission. We talk about that at the center all the time. Beyond that, people who can speak passionately, you need to know how to throw a great party. And that is just, people are going to come on a Saturday in December. It has to be fun and engaging and exciting. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but that's, Bridget and I have to top that again this year.
I have no doubt that you will, because every year the stakes just get higher, the amount gets larger, yes. And it's really incredible. So Bridget, I know you've supported a lot of different causes, so I'd love your take on this. What is one thing that a person or an organization can do to really create that devoted following for a gala or signature fundraising event?
I think it's understanding that the cause isn't that night. The cause is year round, whether it be children, animal abuse, whatever, the cause is year round. So I think the night of the event, there needs to obviously be that mention of the mission, and it needs to be short and it needs to be sweet, but it needs to be committed throughout the year. There needs to be touches of action throughout the year. The center is amazing at that. We have events throughout the year that continue to remind people about the cause. It's not really about people dancing, but why I think the event is so successful in this regard is, one, we entertain. It's the only event I know that people get up there and entertain. And who doesn't love to dance? If you don't know how to dance, you love to watch people who know how to dance. And then what I'm understanding from my first year of co-chairing with Amy, choosing your dancers is so important because it's really the dancer's job to fill that room as much as it is the center's. And so Amy and I have really focused on that this year, that we're trying to choose people, one, that know that their job, yes, you're a celebrity, yes, you're important to the community, but your job is to raise money and awareness for the cause. And so we're really putting that out there when we ask celebrity dancers. And then it's their job, the dancers, to go out and choose to fill those seats with people who, one, are going to come and vote, obviously, but hopefully they're educating about the mission along the way. And I think it's just constant a reoccurrence of the mission and constantly educating people so that when they have a generous heart, they think to go to that cause, and not just on the night of, but all year long, whether it's tax season, whether it's end of the year giving, whether it's, like you close a big commission check, where am I going to give back to my community?
Thank you for sharing all that information. I think there was one thing that you picked up on, and you both kind of talked about, the element, if it's a great party, people will come. And I think what you hit it on the head with the dancers, because the dancers are each going to bring their own crowd. And that's what I always love about this event is I can always count on seeing certain people there, but I will always run into people that have either never been there before or haven't been there in 5 or 6 years. And that energy and the different energies that come in every year really help elevate that event and make it such a great party. So I'm really glad you two brought that up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now you both mentioned, you as co-chairs. So, you were talking a little bit about, the process of selecting dancers, and that's kind of a good segue into like the next question. And that is, what is the key to having a successful relationship with your co-chair? And Amy, I'd like for you to go first, and then Bridget, you can chime in.
A successful relationship with Bridget. I mean, she's just one of the easiest people to get along with. And fortunately, we just hit it off from the start. She's incredibly open-minded, and that is very helpful when you bring a lot of ideas to the table and you're brainstorming. I think it's it's difficult to work with, anyone who maybe isn't as open-minded. She's very open-minded. We were very collaborative, and, kind of no idea is a bad idea. We like to get our hands dirty and dig deep, and it's been super easy and fun so far.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Bridget, what do you have to say about that?
I have so much respect for Amy. I got to watch Amy on the dance floor last year and was blown away, first of all, by her talent. But the second we were introduced, the first word that comes to mind is respect, and knowing that she has so much background with the cause. I'm eager to learn from her. And what I think we both share in common is, okay, let's think outside of the box. Let's push the envelope a little bit. She's not afraid. I'm not afraid. Let's take it up a notch. I think I know in my personal life, I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can do better. And even though there's some fear in that, growth is good. And when Debbie Tate asked me about co-chairing with Amy, she said, look, I asked, are we open to some change? Are we open to some growth? Are we, can we think outside of the box? And Amy and I just really jive on that. And we really jive the most on, okay, when we ask these answers, I mean, we're asking them candidly to raise $100,000. And what I think maybe Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of our biggest missions in this too is to make the dancer experience better, not just for the dancer, but because when the dancer experience is more thoughtfully curated, when they know what they're getting into, when they know what their expectations are, they're naturally going to be more connected to the mission, naturally raise more money, naturally spread the awareness of the cause more. And so we've really been pushing for more dancer involvement. It's kind of a lonely, Amy said it best, it's kind of a lonely job to be out there. You're hidden away and all your guests are there. And so we've got some surprises in store. I'll just tell you that.
I know that there will be, and I would expect nothing less from you. And that actually, it's a good segue into the next question. So you were talking about really putting your own stamp on, on an event and building from what others have done before you. So this being your first year of co-chairing it, how do you do that while also respecting the history, integrity of Dancing with the Stars, the event, Austin, the brand? And Bridget, I'd love for you to answer, and then Amy, I'd love for you to follow up.
Well, the good old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're not looking to change what has already been hugely and epically successful. We just felt like it needs a little bit of a facelift. We want to shock people a little bit. I think when you go to event after event, people know what the run of show is, and we're just trying to make it a little bit more immersive. We want people to feel like they're a part of the party rather than coming and watching the show on stage. And so we're just trying to figure out some ways to really identify new movements in the program. For example, lights go down, music goes up, and people are forced to listen. We really want to constantly bring it back to the cause and try to keep people engaged in what we're there for, which is about the children.
Absolutely. And Amy, I'd love for you to chime in on that, especially because you've had such a long history with the event and the organization.
Yes, I am. So I have attended this event every year since 2011, except for 2014 when I had my son that day. So that is the only year I've missed.
Good excuse.
2014. Yes. So it's, great to have that historical knowledge of the event and seen it grow from, a $800,000 fundraiser, I think it was in 2011, to what it is now, which was 2.8 million last year. It's easy to build upon greatness. And we've been given this beautiful, successful framework that we just have to add our sparkle to, which is fun and exciting and kind of easy to do because they have done such a great job with this event. So yeah, we just get to amp it up.
Well, and speaking of sparkling and amping it up, you two, you both mentioned that you've both been dancers before. So I'd love to hear each of you, and we'll start with Amy, but I'd love to hear each of you talk about how is the experience different for you chairing it versus being a dancer, and kind of how you're involved and how you're preparing for it.
I definitely would not be able to chair this event had I not danced. Dancing gives you so much more perspective, and, the vulnerability, experiencing that piece of it is just huge, and it helps you understand what you're asking of people in the community to do. And if you haven't gone through that, I think that's a really hard thing to ask. I'm much less nervous as the chair, co-chair. I feel like I spent the better part of 2023 just vulnerable, nervous, stressed out. I didn't know who my dance partner would be, what the song would be. So it's kind of hard to picture yourself on a stage in front of 1,200 people, not knowing any, there's just so many unknowns. And then once you do find out, it's exciting and you get to dive in. But, I spent, I think, 9 months not knowing from January to September before I heard what my song was. And so your mind, can get crazy.
It can. And, my husband danced actually in this the very, very first year. And he just talked about that it was like, you like literally sweat out 20 pounds of angst,
Yes.
right before you do that dance. So it's interesting because I wasn't sure if it would be, it's way more time consuming to be a chair, but it's interesting having that perspective. And Bridget, I love your perspective on, the difference between the two, being a dancer and quickly going from a dancer to a chair. So, you only danced a couple years ago and now you're chairing. How's the experience different from someone who's done it, within the last those things within the last few years?
I think the biggest difference, echoing what Amy said, is as a dancer, so much was out of my control. You just kind of had to wait. I was very much like Amy, where as soon as I said yes, I would have started dance lessons in April, as soon as I knew I was a dancer. But there was a lot of hurry up and wait, which is just the process. As a chair, I feel like Amy and I have a lot more control. Obviously, it's a lot more responsibility on our shoulders, but we have a lot more control about what we can see happen and what we can try to make happen. And then I keep going back to this, but I feel like a mama bear with these dancers, where we really want to make it a great experience for them, because having both been through it, we know what a commitment it was. I too couldn't have imagined cheering without going through the process and knowing what it takes and what you're really asking of those dancers, because it's not only the time commitment, but it's the vulnerability of being up on stage. I mean, being up on stage as a kid is one thing, but being up there with all of your colleagues and, all of your clients and all of your friends and people who've flown in. I do not consider myself a shy person, but 2 days before I was on that stage, I had an aha moment in bed that was like, oh my goodness, I'm really doing this. And so, obviously there's the anticipation and expectation that we want to do right by the center, but we're not going to go up there and have to worry about a word or a malfunction. And that's good news.
Precisely, right? Now, Bridget, I want to direct the next question starting with you. And, you were talking a little bit about the commitment with the dancer. So, that a substantial amount of money, because it's not only money, but it's also time. Like you were saying, you found out in April for something in December. So, I mean, it's months of preparation and months of planning. What is the secret to getting somebody to say yes to that sort of time commitment, to that sort of, social capital commitment, to that sort of financial capital commitment?
Jay Ramey danced with me, and I thought it was funny. He said behind stage, he's like, we're not celebrities. We just know a lot of rich people. That's why they chose us. I think you have to find someone who is bold enough to be okay to ask, because at the end of the day, we are asking people to give money, whether it be buying a raffle ticket, buying a table, bidding on an auction item. So we have to find people who are already perhaps in a career where they're already front and center asking people for something. So I think having someone bold enough not only to get up on stage, be vulnerable in front of their life, but being okay to ask for that monetary exchange. And then, finding someone who also understands the mission, because the hope is, like me, I didn't necessarily know about the center before I danced. I knew about it, but I didn't know about it. I am still involved. The goal is to keep these dancers involved because the mission is worth it. So we want to start always with heart and mind alike for the cause, and then hope that they get out there and just work their magic. And then Amy and I really want to be here to be supportive of that. I've talked to a few of the dancers about all the different avenues they can go and ask. And no, you don't have to sell necessarily a $10,000 table. You can break it up, and all the different ways you can go and be a part of the community asking for this ask.
That's really good, because I think you really do have to educate people on what exactly it means to make that commitment, and the different avenues so that they can kind of do it in a way that's best for them. So I love that answer. And Amy, I would love I would love your take on, what is the secret to getting someone to say yes, especially from someone who has been, because Bridget is someone who joined more recently and it got very actively involved. With you, it's a much longer light. So I love your secret to getting people to say yes over the course of a lot of years, because you've been on the board since what? That was probably the 4th or 5th year of the event.
Yes. For me, I mean, candidly, it's a little bit of begging. You know, connecting hearts and minds to mission again, just, really helping people understand what this is for, and explaining that 1 in 10 kids are sexually abused, and kids they know and adults they know have been sexually abused. And it really just kind of talking about exactly what it is the center does and helping people understand that, yes, we're asking you to get on a stage in front of, 1,200 people and your peers. And it takes an outgoing person that's willing to do that and willing to tap their network to fundraise. But at the end of the day, if they understand what it's for, they do realize it's 2 minutes on stage and it's exciting. And we're basically throwing a fun party for you and your family and friends. But you're helping a tremendous cause. And then you become a part of a family and an organization if you choose to. And we hope they do after their time spent with us this year. Then they're forever a part of.
I'm glad you talked about that and kind of what, because it really is kind of one of those, from everything Lance has told me, one of those kind of surreal, it's almost out of body is kind of what he said. So, I'd love to dive just a little bit deeper if we can into like the dancers, and how do you all go about selecting? Like, what are some traits, some common traits these people are going to have so that it's a strong cast, but it also reflects the tapestry of the community? So, all the different tentacles that Austin now has as a city of 2.5 million people. So, Amy, I'd love for your take on that, and then Bridget, if you'd like to follow up, that'd be great.
So, I mean, obviously a diverse cast, people from very different types of work and backgrounds. Outgoing people, bold people, people who are willing to get up and dance. It's a lot. So
it's really about like really you look for people who are really willing to put themselves out there and aren't afraid to, because if people are a little bit less bold, they may back out. And you really want to make sure that it's, you want to make sure that it's matching what the experience is. It sounds like is what
and
you're
their
saying.
Personality type. I mean, we've definitely had some introverts get up there, and I know one personally, a friend of mine, that it was an extremely difficult experience for her, but she did it because she was connected to the mission and she wanted to do everything she could to help abused children. But I know, she was shaking, so definitely for people who are a little bit more outgoing, it's definitely easier. And we look, to people who are well connected in the community. This event is about awareness and education. And so the more new eyes you can bring to this cause, and for people to understand that this does happen in their backyard, that this does happen right down the street from you or wherever in the community, that's the education piece. And getting new people to dance brings their networks and their, family and friends to an event that maybe they wouldn't have been familiar with before.
That was the perfect answer. Just so, so well said. And Bridget, I kind of want to put a slightly different spin on kind of what I was just talking about with Amy here. And, you were talking about, you were mentioning earlier about, celebrities as an example. And the interesting thing is that there's celebrities within Austin, but there's also the last couple of years, there have been celebrities more broadly. So what's a piece of advice you would give to someone or a chair or an organization looking to have a celebrity or a high profile person at their event? How do you get them to say yes?
That's a tricky one, because as we know, many celebrities in town are already tied to a cause. So it's our goal to find a celebrity who marinades with our cause, who will come on board, not just for the event, but for the long term. I continuously talk about that. But when you have a celebrity factor, we find that it does grow the event. I think what Amy and I have been careful about is we want a celebrity factor, but we want the celebrity to also still do the work, to understand, to not just show up. And frankly, a lot of, higher end profile people don't have the time to really put into it. So I think it's a fine line. I mean, there is such a systematic approach that I never would have imagined that goes into choosing the dancers. It's really been fascinating to watch. And there are lists of dancer possibilities, and they have to go from in front of the board to be approved. And then the power of the committee is huge to really talk it out, to see, as Amy talked about, who identifies with different groups around town, and how do we get new movements in and new groups of people. And we're always looking for that celebrity draw, but not at the sacrifice of not having that celebrity raise the money. And that I really just respect Amy so much for being on the same line with me on that. Is we want people to show up because they believe in the cause, not just because they're famous.
That's really important. And yes, there's social capital behind it. And you said it helps the event more broadly, but they've got to be active participants too, for it to really really resonate. And I've known of events around the country where a celebrity will headline it and it raises not even $100,000 because the celebrity is not tied to the cause. So I think that I'm so glad that you brought that up, Bridget, and how important that all is. So thank you for sharing that.
Authenticity, we want it to be authentic.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So while we're on that subject, what are some things that you can share about this year's crop of dancers? Because I'm sure after last year, I'm sure it'll be just as dazzling, if not more dazzling this year. So I'd love for each of you to, share a little bit, and feel free, whichever one of you wants to go first, to talk about this year's cast.
We have a local sports icon, I can say that.
Okay.
We have real estate and investment experts. Let's see, we have medical professional and maybe a notable actor or two.
So what's funny about that? We've talked multiple times today about tentacles, and that's what I love about that list, Amy, is that those are not necessarily 4 people or 5 categories of people you would put in a room together.
Right.
And that helps bring in fuel, the energy, of it. Bridget, I like your input on what does it take for a cast to have good chemistry, that you can just kind of feel it, the camaraderie behind the stage conveys onto the stage.
I am so glad you asked that, because on my particular year, it was a very long night. I didn't even go on. I was the last dancer, and I didn't go on stage until after 10, and we had to be there at 10. So we spent a good solid 12 hours together. And right before I got on stage, one of the other dancers came up and said, "You're going to do great. I'm praying for you." And it made a difference. There was such a sense of camaraderie and support back there. And we're Amy and I are really trying to change this year, so that the dancers have a little bit more of an opportunity to get to know each other, to collaborate, to commiserate, but to be more united, so that support is there the day of. I didn't meet most of my dancers until the day of, and still quickly we bonded. And it was fascinating to see all of the different personalities in the room, all the different backgrounds in the room. And it was quite emotional to see everyone coming together for this cause, all different walks of life coming together for one cause, which is what we want in the audience as well.
That's fantastic. And I mean, it's every single cast I've ever seen of that, you can tell that there's a love there. And the love from the organization, and it's infectious in a good way. Like, it's a good, positive, contagious infection. And it really permeates the whole room. I mean, you can tell that as an audience member. You can see chemistry, whether it's dancers dancing or the cast, commiserating. You can see that, because I know there have been years where the entire cast has been on the stage together. So you can see that genuine love really permeate throughout. And with that, Amy, I'd love for you to touch base on what, for someone who's never gone before, tell guests what people can expect to experience at Dancing with the Stars, and any high-level tidbit or two you want to tease about this year, feel free to do so.
Well, I think when you come to dancing, any year, you can expect to be entertained. This year, though, I think we're aiming for it to be much more immersive. a very captivating gala that really, hopefully, no one has experienced before. From the moment they step off the escalator, we want it to feel like an awesome party where the guests feel a part of the show, a part of the event, and that, you know, everyone walks away on a high from the energy in the room.
That's perfect. And that's, I'm glad that you talked about the high, because that's the one thing people remember. They won't necessarily remember what they ate for dinner, or even the ensemble of a dress they wore, or the clothes they wore, or the suit they wore, but they'll remember that feeling and that energy. And that's kind of what gets them to come back. That's absolutely been the case. Bridget, talk a little bit about, a little bit about, from your perspective, what the experience is like attending a Dancing with the Stars.
I will say I am always sitting in my seat with just the utmost adoration and respect for the dancers who are up there. And, I've known several over the years, and I've known some who definitely it's not their MO to be up on stage. And you see people, and some are clearly more talented than others, but everyone is giving their best shot. And there's just such a rawness and vulnerability. I mean, again, I keep going back to we're adults. I mean, we're not at a recital with our parents. We're at a recital with, everyone we begged and asked, and they paid to come see us. And now we're on stage to put on a performance. It's such an out of the world experience. I loved what you said, Lance said, because you're up there, and as a dancer, I was up there, and it was the best night of my life. Everyone said, "Oh, you're going to want to do it again because you think you'll do better." I did the best I'd ever done. I did not want to do it again. I was thrilled with it. And it was amazing. And to see the passion in the room from a dancer's perspective, but even when I've been an attendee, you can feel the passion in the room, and you might be sitting at a table cheering for one person, but they're cheering for everyone. I think there is a lot of empathy in the room that the dancers deserve all of the encouragement, all of the cheerleading, all of the support, each and every one of them, regardless of who you're voting for, because everyone understands that it takes a lot of courage and commitment to get up on that stage.
It absolutely is. And I will tell you, because there have been years where I've known, where I've known and been very close to multiple people, and it gets kind of tough on who do you vote for, because a lot of those people are your friends. Like Lance and I, like if there's two people, like one of us will vote for one and then the other one will vote for the other. That way we kind of feel like we're supporting both of them. So they're really, especially if you've gone multiple years, you really do get to know, the people who come up with the organization, and they get to dance. So it's, it really is just an incredible evening. And, I know we're coming up on time, so I'm going to end with this one question for each of you. And Amy, I'd love for you to go first, and then Bridget can have the last word. But that is, what is one thing all successful fundraising events have in common?
I really think it's a passion for the cause, and again, connecting hearts and minds to mission. If you find the people whose your organization's mission resonates with them, and really kind of mind society for those people, it works. Having people who are just trying to fill board seats or whatever their company asked them to serve on this board, it doesn't work the same. And so finding those people who actually care is the key.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. And Bridget, I would love for you to answer that as well.
I call it the afterglow. So in my professional world, if you put on an event and people are at the event, but then if you do the marketing and the social media and the advertising afterwards, that's the afterglow of the event. For a fundraiser, if we can put on a great show and we can demonstrate the cause and people are talking about it long after, the afterglow is effective, and people are going to continue to support the mission.
That was a perfect mic drop moment, as it were. As it were, with with what that event will be. And it always is one of Texas's most fun fundraisers. And it was actually the very first fundraising event I ever went to. I went in 2010, so I went first year, a year before Amy did. So this event's always meant so much to me, and it always ups the stakes every year. And I have no doubt this year you two will even take it to higher heights than everyone else before. And thank you both, Amy, Bridget. I can't thank you both enough for being with us today. So thank you.
Thank you for having us, Rob.
Absolutely. And the 18th annual Dancing with the Stars, presented by Mercedes-Benz of Austin and benefiting the Center for Child Protection, will be held on December 7th, 2024 at the JW Marriott in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit centerforchildprotection.org. And that will do it for this week's episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.